Oh
Hi,
yeah.
Ben.
Todd,
How you doing?
doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm good. This is exciting.
This is exciting. Nice to
Yes.
I don't think we've met in person or been
No.
in the same place.
No.
I feel like maybe we were at what were those barn burners?
Okay, yeah, I've been to a couple barn burners.
I feel like maybe we were at a barn burner at the same time.
Okay.
But I don't know. Anyway,
Maybe.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for contacting me. I should say that this whole thing, this podcast has been made possible by Colin Kelso.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
he texted me or sent me a message over Instagram and he said, "You've got to talk to Ben Magaziner."
Well, thank you, Colin.
Yeah. So this is
Uh,
dedicated to Colin.
Respect.
Yeah.
Cheers, Col.
Cheers. That's an interesting beverage. Is that milk?
It's not milk though. It appears I've been referring to it as the quarantine cocktail. I don't know
Okay.
if if you've perused my Instagram. I sort of perform in character as a jar chicken guy,
Okay.
just sort of like a depressed guy that's like constantly meal prepping, which is basically who I am. But it's just a bubbly water and a scoop of like magnesium calm powder. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, so it's just bubbly water and something that will hopefully like relax me and my muscles.
Right. So magnesium has a relaxing effect on the muscles.
They say that, yeah, or particularly like if you have cramping,
Okay.
magnesium is one of the electrolytes that supposedly assists in being less crampy. Which is,
Okay.
yeah,
I might need that because I've had some problems with cramping.
yeah.
So magnesium, maybe I should get on that.
How about at night? Like, do you in when you're sleeping, do your legs like cramp up or you get Charlie horses or anything like that?
Once in a while, yeah.
Yeah,
Once in a while, I have to like my calf will cramp up. I have to get
just
out of
freak you
bed and
out.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but not too frequently. Usually, like
got it.
skating, if I skate for a long period of time, I'll cramp up in weird places, like my stomach, like
Yeah,
my abdominals will cramp up. It's
totally.
really freaky. Like it's really painful and it's kind of debilitating. Like
Yeah, I know
bec-
exactly what you mean.
for the
I
rest
think
of the session, I'm worried that it's gonna because every movement right is in your core in your stomach. So I'm just constantly worried like it's gonna cramp up. It's not a good feeling. Yeah.
one of the first times I skated downtown Philadelphia with like my group of friends when I was a kid. One of my friends encouraged me to jump up on this like high ledge, like do a soul grind on that ledge. We were like halfway into this like day we were really excited about, and I went and jumped up on it and just completely ruined, like done for 2 weeks. Just like oh god.
The
So
cramping.
yeah,
It's a
brutal like abdominal strain.
yeah, it's really bad. Did you
Ugh.
get it where it almost feels like it's popping out of your abdominal, like one of your six pack? It just like
Yes.
bursts out. It's it's brutal.
I did some research on this actually and like found a bunch of videos of like bodybuilders who will have just one, like that guy Larry Wheels. I don't know if you've ever seen his videos. Danny posts his stuff a lot. But
Okay.
there's a great video of him with like one ab, like just like freaking out, and he's just like like breathing through this. Yeah,
Yeah. It's scary.
it is a scary thing.
So I'm gonna drink magnesium. I should
Drink,
try that.
yeah. Thanks, Magnesium Calm, for supporting our Patreon.
Does it taste okay, or does it just taste like water?
It tastes like, are you familiar with like stevia flavor?
A little bit.
Like that. It's a little bit of like an artificial sugar flavor,
Okay.
but I don't eat any sugar and my diet's very boring. So I've come to
Nice.
enjoy like things like this. It tastes kind of like citrusy fake sugar, you know?
Okay.
Like brushing my teeth is kind of like I get to taste like a fake sugar thing.
Yeah.
So I find my small pleasures where I can where I can get them.
So you no sugar.
No sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long has this been no sugar?
couple years.
Wow.
I'll occasionally have some dark chocolate.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Because
I've
that's a
had some
really
health
hard
issues
thing
over
to
the
avoid is sugar. I mean, sugar
it
is
is
in
it's in
everything.
Yeah.
And how strict are we talking? Like, do you not even eat fruit, or are you just talking like processed sugar?
I eat very little fruit.
Yeah.
I'll eat like berries basically.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty strict.
Wow.
Yeah.
And why? Why? What
Sure.
what caused you to make this decision?
Yeah, it's been kind of a series of decisions over the past 10 years when I unraveling some health issues that I've had.
Yeah.
But I've basically found that I'm very sensitive to carbohydrates on a couple of fronts, and I also have some like autoimmune responses to different foods.
Yeah.
So I basically eat like non-starchy vegetables and meat, and that's
Right.
basically and a little bit of fruit here and there.
Okay. And you feel
Yeah.
much better. That makes a big difference for you.
It eliminates most of the so like nuts make me have like an autoimmune issue,
Oh wow.
and then certain things like onions or like alliums, which would be like onions or garlic, I'll have like a gut issue. So it basically like weeds out most of the things that will cause a primary reaction.
Yeah.
And it just simplifies my like things that would produce a flare up. So
Right. Yeah. Just avoid it.
it's nice and easy.
Yeah. Smart.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So rollerblading. Do
Yeah.
you know any? Do you know anything about? You into?
I was thinking about this today because I like kind of I just like did a little bit of a brain dump before while I was sitting here,
Yeah.
thinking about like what I wanted to talk to you about or what I would talk to you about,
Yeah.
and I had just watched Valo 6 yesterday, which I don't know, you probably watched also.
I haven't. I
You
haven't
haven't
watched
seen
it.
it yet.
No, and Joey highly recommended it to me. I need to
Yeah.
watch it. I'll do that. Like if I'm really excited to watch it.
Yes,
So the time has to be right. It's got to be
I totally understand.
I have to have an hour that I can really like sit down and focus on it.
Yeah,
And that perfect time hasn't presented itself yet, but soon.
understood.
Yeah.
I will say only this, is that it's a skate video, which has become like vanishingly rare, like, and I love the sort of 20-minute like what has become a skate video, but this is like a skate DVD that just happens to be on the internet, which
Yeah,
is
it's like an hour long.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like it's more than an hour.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Like, are we as rollerbladers capable of sitting through a video that's longer than an hour?
It need be and like a testament to Yvonne and everyone that's involved, because I think it need be this good to for like our current all of us have ADD,
Right.
to some degree or whatever, or we've all become like phone obsessed. So sitting down for an hour is an investment, and yeah, I was thrilled.
Awesome. And Joey
Yeah.
had the same reaction.
That's great.
He was really impressed, and he said, like, I have to watch it. And it is weird that it's an hour long or longer than an hour, but
Yeah,
it's
definitely not.
it's a good investment of time.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
I'm
think
excited.
it's cool that it's a bit of a time capsule too. Like I think the
Right.
video actually succeeds for having been shelved for a little bit of time.
Interesting. Because I did listen to the Yvonne Jump Street episode,
Yeah,
and listening to him talk about making it, it just seemed like a crazy, overwhelming process. Like they filmed for like 5 years or something.
yeah, it's
Something crazy. And obviously, while filming it, Valo died.
right.
So it is funny that they made a We Are Valo 6. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to kind of be a joke, right? Because it's
A little bit.
interesting. Yeah, I'm happy that he made it. I'm excited to sit down and watch it.
Another thing you should consider watching if you haven't is that Bitter Root, which is like Jeremy
Okay.
Raff just made this like 15-minute video, which is like Yvonne is in also, but it's like Montana parks and some Northern California parks,
Okay.
um, with like Brian Bina and Rob G's in it, and
Wow.
it's really good.
Sorry, what's that called again?
It's called Bitter Root, and it's on Jeremy
Bitter root.
Raff's Instagram and on his YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome. Cool. I'm excited.
yeah, good
It's
stuff.
always exciting like when people make good videos.
Yeah,
I love skate videos, and I love when they're good, when they're well
totally.
done. There's like something really awesome when a skate video hits you, and I
Yeah,
refer to it as the good skate video feeling.
yeah,
Like that feeling is legit. Like it's awesome. It's you can't get it in a movie or anything else other than a good skate video.
yeah.
So
Well, also like maybe you can relate to this, but having grown up during the like skating boom, I remember when like waiting for Drip Drop to come out, which was like I was trying to get that like mind game fix, where I was like I want to see a video that like fucks me up.
right, right,
And I realized that like God, I felt so we were so entitled to like great skate content,
yeah,
you know, because it was just like dumped on us for years. And now I realize, and like mentioning some of these videos, I see that it's incumbent upon both us to trumpet it, and also that like um, the culture is made when these things are made. So like
right,
it's on us to go like, this is our content. Like,
right.
you know, take a
It
look at it, especially
Yeah,
when
the
it's
videos really do propel the culture and the way everyone skates, and good videos can make everyone more passionate about skating, more motivated to skate hard and create their own thing. It's funny that you said that we were spoiled. In a sense, you're right. We were spoiled by high quality content. We weren't spoiled by the quantity of content that we have now. Now we're spoiled by the quantity and not
yes,
so much the quality, which I don't know what. Yeah, I think I think it was better for us to be spoiled by the quality than the
yeah,
quantity, and we would just watch that Brain Fear Gone or Words just over and over and over and over.
yeah.
Um,
Still, I still
it
watch
was
that.
yeah, it was kind of crazy. I mean, to look back on like just watching the same VHS over and over, like a crazy person.
Yeah,
Um, but it shapes I think it shapes people in a really good way, because I've always thought about like all the time you spend watching those skate videos, that was time that you weren't watching like some network sitcom with advertising and all of that. Like I don't know, it shields you from all the bullshit that can really influence you in the wrong ways, I think.
totally. It's actually, I think that would be even more welcome now in the constant barrage of like, we're hit on six different sides now from,
Yeah,
yeah.
too
I
much.
sort of live with like audio content going on, or like headphones on, listening to YouTube video or lecture or audiobook, or like,
Yeah, me
and
too.
any one of those could be a funnel for ads.
Right.
Yeah,
That's got to be some kind of like, yeah, that's an addiction I think a lot of people have, is the audio addiction. Like,
definitely.
and podcasts have filled that really well. Like, oh great, like a 2 hour 3 hour conversation,
Yeah.
perfect. Like it'll fulfill me for the next 2 hours.
I won't be alone for a little bit. This will be good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't like silence.
It's sort of a new thing for me, like a new-ish thing for me. I was in a very long-term relationship that ended like a year ago. So
Yeah,
I've been like enjoying being alone more, but definitely there's a part of me that like sees how my parents became like I remember going back to my parents' house after I moved out, and just the TV would be blaring. I'm like, no one's fucking watching the TV. Like, what's going on here? and I've sort of become like phone guy with like
Right.
what kind of it's sort of the like I think podcasting as a medium is an incredible medium that I'm interested in, and it also creates a really banal like shallow, like I hear it a lot in comedians podcasts, especially in this quarantine era, which has become kind of like, oh, I miss going out to the club and like doing comedy. Like shut the fuck up, dude. Like say something that means something.
Right.
You're fortunate enough to be charming enough for us to like listen to you, but you have nothing to say and you're just cyclically talking to each other.
Just whining.
Yeah, I feel a bit like I've seen or listened to every podcast. Like I think I've seen them all.
All of them.
Every to the last one.
It's almost like podcasts are becoming kind of like porn in the sense that like, do people even need to make more podcasts? There has to be like a gazillion hours of podcast material.
Yeah.
You couldn't listen to it all in your entire lifetime, yet
Right.
there's more being made. It's like, but there's people that are interested in talking to other people and sharing new ideas, so it will never end.
It's true. I think it's also like one distinction that I make in media that I'm listening to is if it's overwhelmingly topical, I try to avoid it. Like if it's like up to the minute, we're talking about what happened today. I'm kind of like, no. If it's something that has like some meat to it, like something that sticks to the ribs, something that has like some pedagogy, or it's something that's sort of like classic, then perhaps there's something to it, and might be worth the time spent listening to it.
Right. You just said a very interesting word, and it jumped out at me because it was in the text that Colin Kelso sent to me, and he said something. So you said sorry, what did you say? Pedagogy.
Yeah, so pedagogy is kind of like the a sort of like well-trodden approach to something. So like if I play music, like I play classical guitar and viola, both examples of like classical music is a field that has like a deep pedagogy, meaning like
right.
We do this thing in this way for this reason. Like, for instance, in an orchestra, everyone plays right-handed because they demand that all the bow, everyone that plays a string instrument plays right-handed because they demand that all the bow strokes go in the same way. There's like an ordered approach to why something occurs.
Interesting. So, like figure skating, for instance, has a deep pedagogy.
A great parallel flight for our kind of, because many of their movements are very similar to ours, but we have a way more primitive approach, meaning that like we decided what the postures were and we kind of just went from there, whereas figure skating has coaches and a deep competitive component that kind of like orders the sport from top down. We have a competitive component, but it doesn't speak much to like where real skating is,
right.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good thing for skating, like the way we experience it? Do you think it could use a deeper pedagogy?
I think it's a great question to be asking about skating right now. And I think you guys should be credited for some of the, like, I took a lot of inspiration from you guys in your like optimism about what an excellent time it is for skating over the last couple of years. Because it took me a little bit of time, I think, to get on board with like postmodern skating, I guess, Actually, I should maybe back up a little bit and explain like I've been an admirer of Canadian skating for a long time. But
me too.
Yeah. my first like skating in Canada experience, I came up to Vancouver and just stopped by a shop task and saw Leon and Danny, and they were both like very welcoming and came skating with me and my friends the next morning. And then I came out with them to like, I don't know if you, like Chris Nima used to host like
Yep.
Sunday night at the who was one of my camp counselors at Woodward like many years ago.
Nice.
Anyway, they were hosting.
Shout out to Chris Nima, legend.
Big shout out to Chris Nima, a total legend. They were hosting these like Sunday night skates, and Chris was like spinning records, and people were like, you know, skating cones, and like people were on wizards, and they had like slider bar, P-rail, you know, out, and like I had a little bit of like as a like a Philly rollerblader, like a fucking try hard. I had a little bit of like my Grinch like heart crack moment where I just saw all of this like this big accepting force, this like uniting force, where like you know like skating in the early 2000s in Philadelphia was hilarious because you wouldn't even like you only skated with your friends. You know,
Wow.
there'd be like you'd see other people that you knew that were rollerblading that did the same thing, and you were just like, nah, we don't fuck with that. Just a lot of like divisive energy, which has its merits too. But yeah, anyway, to wrap this back around to this question of pedagogy currently, is that like I think the last couple of years, and Instagram as a technology has been a very like access has increased. Skating has become more accessible as a more things are considered aggressive skating now, or more our kind of skating, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Like from Robbie Pitts to wizard skating to like slalom kind of movements. Like there's a lot of things that make skating a little bit more accessible to like
diverse
kind of movements, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's not just like fish brain on a drop rail,
right?
And I think this is generally a good has been a good thing, but I think sort of the only voice that we hear on the like conservative end of where skating needs to be is like people that are like fucking Jeff Downes made that post the other day. It was like, remember when like skating had standards or what, you know, like,
right.
Which is like such a boring perspective,
right?
That it's like if it's not a hammer, it's not a trick. I think finding this balance between like allowing new interesting movements that are a little bit have more depth than like, because if you look at our sort of canon of pedagogical movements, right? Like soul, top soul, all of our grinds, you know, excluding things like tabernacle and sort of the weirder grinds. Even you can even make a case that like many negative grinds are like non-canonical.
Right.
And I just think a lot of that stuff was like, it was kind of made in a rush. You know, if you think about our history, we're sort of like, hey guys, we've got wheels on our feet, we've got like the baggy pants, like let's kind of get a canon of movements, you know, so we look like we're not fucking idiots out here. And I think we did a pretty good job. But I also think that there's a lot of reasons to consider some other things entering the fray for like myriad reasons. And I don't think it need to be fleshed out too much. Like to come back to the figure skating example, figure skating is such a pedagogical pursuit that it's like to a science, right? You know, you have like a rating system to the hundredths. And one of the beautiful things that I think a lot of us appreciate about our sport is that it is informal. Like, like I almost think talking about it is almost too much. Like the appropriate way of demonstrating what skating is delivering it. Like Latimer was never like, hey guys, here's the purest Cab Soyale ever. I'm gonna show you now, and this is the truth. He just fucking
Right.
did it, and we were all like, "You're the best." I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Actions. Yeah.
Yes.
Speak. And I believe that anything can become canonical if it's done correctly. Like
Hmm.
if it's developed and if it's refined, and then you get enough people learning that same movement and
Yeah.
on a refined level, and that's when it has a name and there's like it's been done so much that people can kind of scrutinize the right and the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
There's so many things I think right now. We're in this crazy period, I think, where a lot of those things are being played with and determined like in real time.
Yeah.
And over the next 20, 30 years, I think a lot of the things that people are doing are going to become more like labeled and canonical and like describable. There's going to be a formal language around it. This is something that I've struggled with in terms of like wizard skating, for instance.
Yeah.
Like trying to all write ideas, but it's so cumbersome to write down wizard skating ideas because a lot of the shit doesn't really have a name. So I have to actually describe where my right foot is and where my left foot is. But over time, I think language is an important component to like making things more I can't even fucking say the word, but whatever the word you said is, having a language associated with where you can have a dialogue with someone about it and you can talk about it in a more refined way. Like when I'm talking to people about wizard skating, I feel like an idiot. Like I feel like I'm kind of bumbling around, and there's certain words that describe things like gazelle. Like certain words have been developed, and that's good, and that's just the beginning of that that whole language being created.
Totally.
So important. But
Yeah.
we're in a primitive stage, and I think in a way we have to accept that, because I mean we have to start somewhere. We're young, right? Like figure skating, for instance, has decades of history and development and kind of flushing out what's possible, and it's very rare that there's new movements kind of innovated in figure skating, right? They're kind of at that point like they've figured it out. Right?
It's true. I mean,
We haven't figured out aggressive inline skating or wizard skating or any of this,
something that gave me some perspective on this has been skating with quad skaters over the past year or so. Because while quad skating has been around longer than debatably this kind of like skating parks with quads on a wider level seems newer to me, or I can see more of the infancy going on, which has been sort of the like the devil's advocate situation where I can see them really struggling with their technology in a more primitive way than us. I can see the sort of like, hey, let's get a canon of movements so that so that like we're not going to get chased out of the parks.
Right.
We know what we're doing. So it's while I've commonly been in this perspective where I'm like, oh, we're in a primitive state. It seems that in many ways they're in a more primitive state than us, and that's given me some pause to appreciate our sort of like, what we've done up to this point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Rollerbladers have put in a lot of work in terms of
Holy
like
shit.
developing, their trick repertoire, and like I think we've done a really good job. Like if you compare it to quad skating, there hasn't been that many people over the years really pushing that sport in on like skate park and things like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like so I think
huge.
even though the technology's been around for a longer period of time, like we've developed rollerblading a lot more than quad skaters have. I hope I'm right about that. I hope I'm not
I think we're both
just
a little bit
less educated. hopefully I'm not just less educated on quad skating, because that's true for sure. But
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same for myself. I'm not like a scholar on the sport, but I've done a little bit of research, and like I'm a big fan of Brian Wainwright, the
yep,
like crab stance guy.
yeah,
Also, like one of the few people that mentioned, like, I remember reading things about him early on doing like training outside of skating for skating, which has been another sort of layer that has informed my skating over the past couple of years of like how to maintain capacity over time. I worked at a gym for the past few years I ran a gym with a few people in town.
yeah,
So kind of like strength training and like movement perspective has trickled into my perspective on skating.
right,
And so having him as like a, somebody as a marker, even when I was like 16 or whatever, like, oh, this guy's like doing yoga, to maintain his skating, especially like in this, his hips are wide open,
yeah.
in this positions.
Got to have some mobility.
Yeah, not a joke.
Yeah.
But another thing in the observing quad skating in its sort of infancy state is watching people skate when they don't know what they can't do is a really inspiring thing.
Right. Expand on that. I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
There's just there's a certain repetitive thing that happens, especially when like you skate with a group of people, right? Like you know this situation. You show up at the ledge and you're like, oh, I haven't skated in a month. I got to make sure like I don't look like a fucking bozo out here, And so you do your shit, and sometimes sessions turn into those like, oh, I'm going to demonstrate my trick vocabulary on this thing, and then you'll demonstrate your trick vocabulary.
Right.
I feel less and less interested in that kind of session as I currently skate, and watching people go like, oh, I didn't know I could do a handstand, or I didn't know I could do all of the toe stop shit that people are doing on quad skates.
Very cool.
Is very cool. I agree.
Yeah.
So being in that state where it's before you've accepted like what your vocabulary is. It's a more like a improvised state, which I think is a more exciting. Like I love being around that vibe rather than like you do a back farf and then I'll do a back farf and then like then we'll know that we're skating because we did our movement.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Where there's a more free perspective. It's funny because I have been in those sessions where nobody says it, but I feel like everyone is kind of hypnotized to think that they need to do certain tricks, or they need to do a trick on a certain object. Like if I look back to like skate competitions, say at a skate park, there always ends up there's this trophy obstacle that's maybe like the biggest part of the skate park that everyone feels like they need to hit it in order to like have the respect of their peers. So like they have to hit that big like sub box or whatever it is. And then like it's funny because people get hypnotized and then they're not free to think for themselves like, what do I actually want to skate? And then there's what you're saying, there's those sessions where you just feel really free to like do exactly what you want to do, and you feel like people are going to accept that and be stoked on it. It's a much healthier kind of approach.
I think, and even like the worst example of the skate park or the skate competition trophy is the jump out of the park,
Right.
As the person who's jumped out of the park, and also big respect to your legendary 720 out of the park.
I do really like jumping out of parks. Sometimes, like if there's a nice setup for it, like I watched Basement's new edit, and Anthony Marciano does a really nice 540 out of the skate park, and I was like jealous at how perfect, like it looked like such a nice launch and such like a nice like it was like perfect, right? And sometimes those launches out of the park, they're just like begging for it. They're just like,
Totally.
do this. You have to do it.
There's like the 5% motocross in all of us,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Like even as skating develops and there's like footwork, there's still this like, how much of like a metal militia motocross dude am I? Because
Yeah.
he's in there a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. He exists.
Um, yeah, the maybe one additional thing I wanted to add on this pedagogical conversation is the notion of like thinking about skating sort of like an economy has been a way that's informed my like what movements I'm interested in or what like qualities of skating I think are valuable. And people are like the argument always seems like let people do whatever they want, or like if it's not super dangerous, it's not a trick. Where like you can find, like I saw this video today on some, I think his Instagram handle is like Ninja Korea or like Korean Ninja, and it's some guy on like a pair of bad rec skates with a brake, and he's one of those like parkour guys that like is just like walking on the top of like a high building, with like a selfie stick.
Yeah.
And he jumps from one building to another. He's not a skater, like obviously not a skater.
And he does it on rollerblades.
On rollerblades with a brake on it, and like he makes it by like an inch. Like it's fucking horrible.
Whoa.
Anyway, I bring this up because like you can find people willing to do dangerous things all over the place. Like it's not a rare commodity within or even with our, and you can also find lots of this sort of general skating, but like things that have this middle ground qualitative experience where like I don't know, it's sort of the wrong word, but like when grace is kind of present, or a certain kind of control, like you can just see it. That I think pursuing that like that rare middle ground where like it need not demand this danger quotient. I think of like the example I was using was like Louis Zamora Topsoul at Sports and Music Festival. Do you remember this movement by any chance?
Was it where he did kind of a gap to it?
Yeah.
Like from a bank.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he slides really far. That was like the first time I remember it being widely displayed. Like, oh, that was like you didn't have to skate.
Undeniable.
That was like controlled, interesting use of the technology. Like staying in touch with that component of what we're doing is more important than these edges, the what's the word I'm looking for? The imperatives of the conversation being like, make it accessible or make it risky. It's finding that rare commodity in the middle where something like grace or control is demonstrated.
Right. I think grace is a good word to describe it.
Yeah. It's sort of like it's kind of a hard word to, I think it's sort of like, it can be triggering in some ways where people are like, I'm not trying to be graceful, like I'm trying to be like, It's
funny to think that someone would like take offense to being called like graceful. I know many times in the skate park, people have said to me, like people I don't know, they've said like it looks like you're like figure skating, and they're not saying it as like they're not saying it as an insult.
Right.
They're saying it as like you have like a crazy amount of control, like.
Yeah.
And I don't take offense to it, even though like some people probably would, like being called a figure skater.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting aside. I went on a date with a figure skater like a year ago, and I was like excited to be like, yo, we both like skate, She was totally like did not think rollerblading was remotely interesting. Yeah. I just thought, I was like, oh, this will be a great like commonality between us.
Right.
But she was just like, she kept showing me clips on her Instagram and thought our skating was like, not like, it wasn't even real.
Just trash.
Total
complete
trash.
trash.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Another thing with the not knowing what you can't do uh, thing that we were touching on was a bit of an experiment I did earlier this year was microdosing LSD on a fairly regular basis. So for
Right.
like every 3 days, I took like a tenth of a hit of acid, I guess it would be.
Wow.
Yeah, less than that.
Yeah.
But I did a fair bit of skating during that time, and that was the best part of it. Was like I wasn't so. It's basically like a sub-perceptual dose, so you're not really feeling anything. You just kind of have a little bit of like everything's a little bit glittery, and there's sort of like a wind at your back, you know?
Right.
If you understand, if you get
Little
my meaning.
energy and yeah.
Yeah, you're a little bit like, this is wiggly. Yeah, but it was a joy to show up at some kind of session and just feel like for a moment, like when you're about to do your first trick or just like rolling around, there was like someone speaking to me that was like, you could do whatever you want right now. Like,
Ooh.
you don't have to do like a warm up back rail or whatever, or like, just like, remember, you could do like nothing is outside of your potential. You could do literally anything right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just a really nice suggestion.
That's such an obvious and powerful thing to think right when you start skating. And it's just so true and so basic, but so like if you could actually harness that mentality,
right,
you know, when you're skating, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Totally. I had sort of the opposite experience recently. I've skated my first like dudes cram and go approach down rail and like take a couple steps and skate it down rail.
Yeah.
Which was really, really fun, by the way. Something I haven't done in many years.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of like so much of my teenage developmental experience actually occurred skating down rails. You know, and bear with me for this for a minute, but like you show up at the down rail and you're like walking up to it and you're like, oh, this is a sick rail, cool. You're optimistic, and then you like put your skates on and you come up to it. Everybody turns into golfers. You know, they're like, oh, there's a crack here, or this thing sucks, or the one on the right's like a half an inch higher. You know, and then my pattern is be scared and then diminish myself. You know, like ceaselessly, like you suck, nobody likes you, fuck you, you're scared. And I started doing that again, and I was like, hold on a second. Like I've gone to way too much therapy to like unpack this process of diminishing myself to do something. And
that's interesting.
Yeah,
so you would diminish yourself.
Yeah. I learned it as a really powerful technique where, you know, I would just basically be like, fuck you, do it. Fuck you, you suck. Fuck you, you know. And then you would eventually do the thing that you're afraid of, but by the time you do it, you're like, you feel like such shit that, you know, you didn't like the exchange sucks. And I found myself in my like later 20s, like I would employ this tactic in places where it didn't belong, because it's like it's like a turbo button to get something done. But like I would be like you wake up in the morning and it's like, get the fuck out of bed, you like piece of shit, you know, and it's like, wow, really don't need to be, I could do this a little bit more. I could treat myself like someone that I care for rather than
be a bit more gentle with myself.
Yeah.
But it would work for certain things.
It works for a while, but I think it's not a long-term strategy.
Right. It is interesting that we all deal with these different voices in our head. Like you have the voice that's like, you fucking, you pussy, just do it. And then you have the pussy. The pussy's a part of you. You have that person like, why are you talking to me like that? I mean, you're right, but like, be nice about it. Look, we're in this together, you know.
Right.
Let's do this rail harmoniously.
Yeah.
But skating, I find you compete with those voices. Like, I compete with the voice that like is really self-deprecating, the voice that's like, you suck, like, you're no good, your style sucks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I have the other side of me that's like, no, you're fucking dope, you're really dope. Like, and I'm constantly feeling those two sides,
Yeah.
you know. And like, obviously the good sessions are when the cocky one overrides the little bitch that's like, I suck, I'm terrible. And then you have those sessions where the little bitch takes over and you're like, I just want to go home. I'm just nothing I do is good, you know.
I love hearing when people like their own skating, like, or that they have that sort of like, oh, like,
Me too.
I know that was sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like hearing that people like to watch their own skating.
Oh yeah.
And I find that, yeah, there's a quality. I can almost tell like that certain people would like watching their own skating. Like, I feel like Sean Kelso, even though he's very self-deprecating, I feel like he does enjoy watching himself. Same with Colin Kelso.
Mm.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
I don't think that you're wrong. I want to mention, I think Sean is a really good judge of when he does something really good. Like,
right.
Or occasionally I'll get like a preview clip from him, and you know, whereas like everybody like, look what I did. Whereas like I occasionally get these nuggets from Sean that are just like, oh fuck, that was so good.
Right.
Yeah. So I appreciate his discerning. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
both
got it.
sides. I guess it is good to be a critic of your skating. But I think people can go too far with it, where there's a certain, like, you can't always be the authority on your own skating, because you kind of have a fucked up perspective of it, because like you were there and you did it, and you knew exactly what was going on in your head. I think it can taint you're not seeing it from a pure place of just like, oh, here's this guy skating. It like, you know so much about it, you're so invested in it that you might pick it apart in ways that other people are not going to. And I think it's important to be open to, like, even though you don't like it, it's still good, and you should like embrace it and use it, even though it's not perfect, and you do hyper focus on this one aspect of it, like, oh, it wasn't exactly what I was going for, because people don't know that people don't know what you were trying to do, and they don't see this thing as a mistake. They just see it as like, that's what happened, you know. Right. That's what he did. So like, it's an important skill to like own your shit, even if there's that feeling like of inadequacy, or like, even if you're not super stoked on it, you should always own it, because other people won't notice that.
Well, it's like, how do you allow for development too? I think it's like, if we were all only able to say things that were perfectly true and without mistake, you know, we would just end up running these grooves into the ground of like, you know, whereas if you're in a situation where you allow yourself to make a mistake or go outside of your canon of movements or whatever, then suddenly it's like, are you trying to just do things that work, or are you trying to like toy with some new ideas that might push you in a new direction?
Yes.
So like, how do you make the right kind of mistakes? How do you avoid repetitive patterns?
Take chances, and be willing to not, like, if you're always pursuing that dope feeling, that feeling of perfection, you're going to limit yourself. You're not going to grow in like other areas, because to start anything or to try to like pave new ground, you have to be clumsy, you have to make mistakes. It's all a part of the journey. And in skating, that's so important. to be able to
100%.
just fuck around and just try shit.
Especially I think for the experienced skater who's like I'm a good skater, I only do good shit. You know,
Right.
like I expect myself to show up and do good shit.
High standards. It needs to
Right.
be above knee high
Exactly.
at all times.
Like how do you in that realm, how do you allow for incremental progress? Um,
Right.
that's like another thing coming back to quad skaters. Like I was skating with my friend Amber a lot earlier this year, and she would just like drop into really scary, like steep Northwest style pool bowls, and would just like jump over hips and like jump to fakie in ways that absolutely fucking terrified me. She's been skating for like 2 years and completely rips, but like I would have to like get in the bowl and just work up like foot by foot, you know, just like humble myself to accept that I was scared of this thing and do it. And it would I really appreciated that like it doesn't always have to feel like it's nothing or you're jumping on the drop rail. Like
Right.
you can work at this layer where you just expose yourself a little bit more to a little bit to whatever the thing that you're doing, figuring out how to just like accept working at this pace where you're piling on layer by layer until a thing feels comfortable rather than it's
Definitely.
all a fuck it moment, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
No, 100%. As I get older, I'm all about that. I'm all about figuring it out,
Yeah.
like, yeah, incremental kind of. There's no, you don't. There was almost like a shame in that. I feel like when we were younger, a shame in like
Right.
taking your time and doing things in a safe way. It's like, just don't be a bitch, just go for it. But
Right.
no, it's probably smart to like take your time and analyze, be like a kind of a scientist. Like I haven't skated with Alex Brosco, but I've heard people describe him, and he figures things out. He examines the environment and he looks at the angles and kind of can roll it and feel it out. And being a rollerblader is kind of being a physician in some sense, like not a doctor, but like a physics kind of
Understood.
a scientist of sorts. You're playing with angles and you're where's the crack? Like, where am I going to jump? And like, am I going to jump right where that crack is? Cause that might be a problem. Like kind of you're finding the problems that you need to find solutions to. And
Totally.
you become kind of like, the goal is to do it safely, right? You're not trying to, scorpion. You're trying to like, you want it to work out. So I think embracing that is a good thing. Embracing the kind of scientific perspective of skating.
I'd like to piggyback on what you're saying a little bit, which is like the objective physical analysis of what you're doing. Something I think a lot about is like the metaphysical component of like how to produce meaning out of using these elements, right? Like how does that crack make the trick meaningful to you? Because that's like you sort of need to sell the exchange to yourself. Like, I could scorpion on this, but there's something about the way that crack speaks to that ledge or whatever, whatever the sort of bargain you're making with yourself that doesn't necessarily have to do with the like just the pure physical act of it. It's like that's another place where I think skating is happening, where it's like how are you using this to produce meaning, which is somehow distinct from the just like the physical, like our collection of like rollerblading yoga poses. I think the best skaters are doing that too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very personal thing.
100%.
And so like for you personally, like what kind of meaning do you derive from skating, or like why do you skate?
Wow, Todd, we're getting right there now, huh? Well, one thing is that I think it's a really fascinating like movement practice having touched on a range of other movement practices such as like strength training or yoga, gymnastics, rock climbing, dance, like um, all of them sort of like have some component of it where it's like uh, where functional movement happens, right? Where you don't go outside of what's generally considered like appropriate alignment of the body, and
Right.
then there are like the components of those disciplines where you're going out. You're like, this is the place where we might pay a price, right? Where like you know a dancer does a really risky movement where they're like holding someone up and they're extending the spine or something like that, or a rock climber like makes a big jump for like a dyno for a hold or something like that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I kept toying with each of with the things that interested me outside of skating, but the bargain kept seeming the same, right? Where it's like, what movement patterns are you willing to sort of pay a price for? And at a certain point, I think I got frustrated with skating in my 20s where I was like, okay, I'm never get like, people are developing their careers or moving on in their life, and I'm still feeling like obsessed with skating. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, we got to jump ship. Like, let's find another boat here where we can use what we learned from skating, but like, something with like a future in it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was like, no, I'm a fucking skate rat. Like, I just love like. If you ask any of my friends, I suspect they would describe me as like a fucking skate. And so to come back to this notion of it being a fascinating movement practice is like there's so many of these positions that we occupy that like a royale or a sweat stance or any of the positions that sort of put us in these compromised non-functional situations, like they can be trained for. You can like there's a person that I follow is a guy named Ido Portal. He's like
Yeah.
a kind of, and you familiar with him?
Yeah.
One of the
Amazing.
Yeah, totally amazing. There's no such thing as what is it? There's no such thing as improper alignment. There's like insufficient preparation.
Yeah. I
So
remember that quote from him, and that blew my mind.
Yeah,
Because from a fitness perspective, like it's all about like form and doing things properly and never
right.
putting yourself in a compromising position. But it is like an interesting philosophy to think that there is no improper position, just
Yeah,
improper training or improper preparation. Like there's positions you're not prepared for, but you can prepare for
totally.
anything. That's like what mobility is.
Right.
Ido Portali is like hardcore mobility guy. Like he can put his body into such strange positions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, totally. I did a workshop with him in Colorado a couple years
did
ago.
you?
Yeah,
Wow,
it
cool.
was very cool.
That's
It was the
very
most
cool.
physically. It was like 3 days of just like beat like 8 hours a day of moving.
Yeah.
Just brutal, total Israeli style. Like, okay, what we're doing here is like pretty shit, but we'll keep going. Uh, anyway, the beginning to think that like I might not need to feel like skating is something that I just need to let go, and it might be something that I need to sort of like integrate into my life.
For sure.
You know, I think many of us have this negotiation, right? Like even like do you wear when you go skating, you probably wear slightly different clothing than you do if you were to go out to dinner or something
Very
like that.
different clothing. Yeah, very.
Same.
Yeah.
And I think all of us have this sort of like, where do we keep skating in our life? Like, when do I put on the costume? Um,
It's rollerblading cosplay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Someone that really helped me think about this is a strength coach that I worked with in Portland, a guy named Scott Hagness, who's I think he's 52 or 53 now, and he's a flatland BMX guy.
Okay.
And he fucking rips. Like,
Wow.
And he trains all the time, and it's clear that the center of his practice is this flatland BMXing. And, anyone else that I pursued in the sort of fitness world, it was kind of this rigid, like, no, you lift the weights, and if you don't follow the rules here, then, like, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So this idea that, like, the way to maintain a skating practice across time, or like a functional moving body across time, is to do the things that people commonly don't ask of their bodies. Like,
Right.
if you don't use it, you lose it. Was that the expression?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like one of it's such it's a trope, but that's the way skating is maintained across time. Is you
100%.
continue to ask something that seems unreasonable, and if you're fortunate enough and you mitigate the risk, then you get some of the benefits.
It's true. We're a lot more adaptable than people
Oh, yeah.
remember, because it's not easy. It's not an easy path, but the body will respond to things with consistency.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I have gone through the same psychological process as you, kind of worrying that there's no future in skating, or it's not a worthy path.
Yeah.
Like, even in terms of fitness, sometimes I'm like, I would just be better off if I just, did HIIT workouts and yoga and didn't fuck around with skating, because I'm just like damaging my body.
I know.
And there is some of that, but you're right. By extending your body and by doing some things that maybe you think are stupid and other people think are stupid, demanding that of your body's going to respond to it. So I think it's a really it's an important part of my movement practice. The other thing is that, like, I do other things. I do yoga and I do fitness. That stuff is really important to me as I get older, to try to be as strong and as flexible, and it makes skating more fun for me when my body feels strong and able to do the things. No other activity matches skating in terms of its, like, creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like other things feel so rigid to me, and I almost like that they're rigid and safe, and I'm gonna get a certain result, like a certain workout, like plyometrics or whatever it is. I'm doing it I'm trying to control my body and trying to be as safe as possible. And then when I skate, it's my chance to get as wild as possible and creative. And combining the physical movement with the creative aspect, it's a very special thing. It's a very unique activity in that sense, that you're combining your artistic and your athletic side. There aren't many things like that.
No, certainly. And we've been sort of alone in our discipline for a while, like we're not getting a lot of, like, I think there's something where those two, you're both pursuing something physically and creatively, and you're also, like, not receiving really any kudos from the outside world, and yet you persist forward. Like,
right.
That's everything.
Yeah.
That's all of us choosing this particular thing and struggling uphill with it.
Fuck. Technical issues.
It's tough, man.
It is. It's a hustle. You just gotta perseverance.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We were talking about repetitive movements and specialization. Like,
right.
The kind of recognizing that as skaters, I think many of us are like, yeah, we're bought in. Like, I'm here to pay the price for this experience. I still think there's a way to, like, be a generalist with there's a helpful mechanism of like trying to be a generalist with respect to that, you know, like that, like, and you can see it in skating now, like inviting other, I mean, I think that's the whole process of like fucking with this idea of pedagogy, where we're like, what are the principal movements that matter in our discipline? We're like,
Right.
we're gonna toy with the edges of that. Like Danny's great at that, Colin Martin's great at that, Drew is great at that, and at the same time you have people like I see Sean Darst is kind of like a he's a deeply pedagogical skater, and I've never skated with
Right.
him, but just observing what he does, he's like he plays the classics and he plays the shit out of them, right?
Right.
He's like, I'm gonna put the fucking classics with like even a straight air. He makes a forward air like oh my god, why would anyone do anything else but jump straight?
Right. He's refining the
Yeah.
basics to like a high level.
Yes.
Yeah, and there is that path. I respect that path a lot.
100%. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
seeing having both of those going on at the same time. Though, you know, like you also don't need to get everyone to agree. Like you don't need
No.
all of those people pushing those edges and going like, this is all like I like people, you know, driving their ship in a particular direction and being like, you know, kind of stalwart and like, fuck this, I don't like this kind of skating, I don't like this kind of skating. I'm like, good.
Yeah,
So
good.
keep going.
I like strong opinions, and I
Yeah.
like people kind of carving out their own meaning and
Yeah.
and what they think is the right path. That's a part of skating, is like deciding what your path is.
Yeah.
Deciding what you're going to focus on, you know, what tricks you're going to develop, you know.
Yes.
And in some ways I'm jealous of those people that like the Sean Darsts, that skating is very simple and they kind of it's easy to articulate and it's easy to break down and kind of pursue. I find that my path is very complex. Like I'm constantly like my skating is like this never-ending puzzle that
Yes.
like I don't even know what the end picture looks like. And I don't even know what the pieces are. I'm trying to like create the pieces, and like a piece is like a new move that I can try to incorporate into the puzzle. It's complex. I love it, but I also it's like pretty overwhelming, and it's kind of like stumbling around in the dark. I'm not exactly sure where it's going. I believe in it, but it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah,
But everyone needs to like follow their heart, their like their feelings, you know.
right.
And I respect that.
Yeah, I think that's the opportunity that, you know, like skating presents at that level, at the meaning level, right? Where it's like, that's kind of asking more of yourself than like, what can I do? Like, what are the collection of tricks I can do on this ledge? Sort of like, you know, that's a bird's eye view perspective of like, you know, I expect you've been skating 20 years or something at this point or more.
Yeah.
So it's hard to avoid that kind of like, you know, observation. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. Why am I so into this?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it just is what it is. So what do you think is your like future in skating? Like in terms of
Yeah.
how you experience it?
Thanks for asking. I say that because so infrequently do people give a shit. Like, that's like a concerned, you know, like you're interested in, you know, anyway. I personally, I don't feel I feel content that like if I show up on my skates, like the right things will happen. I think I need to ignore some of my like if anyone has observed my skating on any level, like I think I need to retire my top porn. I have a great top porn. Some people will disagree with you, including Nemo. Uh, Nemo is critical of the Philadelphia top porn, um, and I think
Are
in
we
many
talking
ways,
alley-oop or forward?
I think really he's critical of almost all Philadelphia top porns, with the exception of Cheshire's. Um, and he gave me some like really valuable criticism the other day that I appreciate. Also, living on the West Coast, like there's a less sort of critical skating culture here than what I grew up in, and I really miss that like critical voice, you know. Uh, so I think I need to avoid some of my classic tricks and just expand my vocabulary a little bit from just like a technician standpoint.
Okay.
And also on a like another layer is like something I've been working on and have done a little bit of work on is like I did a workshop, I guess it was almost a year ago now, that I called Skate Movement, which was basically like I hosted an event at a gym at the gym that I was working at, that was basically like producing a kind of experimental series on like how do we practice skating when we're not skating? How do we? It borders on some like movement prep kind of stuff that's fairly fitnessy. Like how do we generally prepare the body for skating before or after, or help recovering? But I also want to toy with other ideas that are not like why a person would go to a physical therapist or something like that. Like how do we toy with like expanding our capacity to improvise, you know, toying with like kind of creative games. And so I'd like to actually expect myself to produce some content on that.
Nice.
And yeah, just like contribute a little bit more explicitly,
Yeah.
because you know, I talk to like many of my friends in these little group chats. But there's a lot of people that are returning to skating or just starting skating, and I've been sort of like you know, like as kind of skate scholar and like troll. Like I think probably many people know me in skating because I've just been like making fun of people on the internet for a really long time.
Yeah.
Shout out Jeremy Townsend. He and I have like a, I don't know, 17-year beef at this point. Yeah, I've just been brutal to him over the years. I mean, and he's been such a good sport. I want to say, like, J-Town, like, thank you. You've been, like, really cool, and I've been just fucking roasting you.
Shout out J-Town.
Yeah, you know him. And we'll put up his Instagram in the show notes. So, yeah. But I think there are things worth saying about the skating that's happened and the skating that like should happen that I can that I can articulate. So I'd like to expect myself to do so.
Yeah, and you've had a long history in skating, and you've had an interesting kind of, you know, your experience with fitness and kind of looking at skating from that perspective. Is interesting. So yeah, you do offer a lot of valuable kind of thought and commentary, and yeah, it'd be interesting to put something together that was kind of structured and kind of offered something like this. Was it like a lecture that you put on?
It was kind of like a brief talk at the beginning, and then there was sort of like a physical, you know, we would go through like a series of different like drills would kind of be the way to drill is sort of an insufficient word, but that's kind of the idea. It's like an experiential thing. I mean, was it
with skates on or off?
This one was off, but yeah, I think there's room for that. I think it's just like that. I don't know that that's necessary until in this vision that I have of it until kind of like later on, or in very specific ways. But
Yeah.
yet, when I hosted that workshop, the world was kind of different, and people could gather in physical form. So the idea that I had at that point was to, maybe mirror some events alongside like Blading Cup or Winter Clash or things like this where you could link into it and host an event that people would want to attend or get excited about.
Yeah, I love that idea
Yeah.
of, having kind of a structured, or even attempting to structure kind of like even a warm up. Like what would a classic skates off, maybe skates on warm up look like, and what would a kind of, if you looked at a session as more like training, like if you had like kind of a training session, what would the classic movements be that you would want to cover in your training, and how could you kind of structure it? And like, even like, I like getting that conversation going, even if it's not perfect right off the bat, and other people can comment on it and add their 2 cents, or maybe add movements that they feel are important, or people can customize it, but having kind of a basic structure would be helpful for people. It's just an interesting thing to think about.
Well, very fundamentally, like one of the situations that we're in, like a skating posture is knee over toe, right? Like when you begin to enter a position that looks like you're skating, that's when your knee goes either to your toe or beyond.
Right.
Which to lots of generalist like physical sensibility, we've been told don't bring your knee over your toe.
Right.
So like from the very beginning, we're doing something that, someone might look at and kind of go like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So doing it in the, like, we can do the incorrect thing in a more correct way, or prepare the body for that.
Totally.
Yeah. That's an interesting path. Interesting discussion.
I think so much of the interesting skating over the past couple of years has come from elder statesmen in the scene too.
Yeah.
So I think the prospect that that it's the duty of love, like you described, like this idea that like skating produces this idea that you keep everything else in line so that you can continue to skate.
Yeah.
Like the onus is on all of the people that are, 35 plus to like keep their shit together so we can continue to see your skating.
Yeah.
It's like there's hidden stuff that we want, when you're like the price you pay when we're 50 and you've got an idea, but like, you can't fall on your wrists, right? Like I experienced that a lot lately, is like I cannot fall on my hands or they're going to hurt for 3 weeks.
Yes.
So I think there's potential for like for really special things to come out when the price is high, to like get your idea out. That's actually like a furnace for really fascinating skating.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this was I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
I'd be into doing it again, actually, for sure.
Yeah, I'd be sorry if I rambled.
No, that's great. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Is rambling.
I was thrilled to talk to you, and I have been a fan for a long time. I don't know if Selwyn Briggs bought Cirque du Soleil in like 2006 in Philadelphia, and we had like a sort of premiere at our house.
Yeah.
Which we were like just thoroughly enthused by what you guys were doing.
Nice.
And I love to see that you're still skating and still producing really interesting skating, and even more than that, like I just want to commend you guys on like I don't want to blow smoke up your ass or anything here, but bear with me.
Keep it coming.
Okay.
Keep the flattery coming.
You guys have contributed in ways that like I never would have. I don't think I could have expected at that moment. By opening things up with many of the different kinds of movements that you do, inviting wizard style skating in. I just think you should feel proud. So
Awesome. Thank you. That's
thank
very
you.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a great chat. Yeah, really thought-provoking stuff. And yeah, I'd definitely like to do it again. And
Sounds.
sorry, you're in Washington?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Portland. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know you've skated with Danny and Stu, and you're familiar with the Brady brothers, Leon.
Yeah, I think I might go so far as to say I'm a member of Express.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And you should be proud.
Todd, I am. I fucking love those guys.
Yeah. The Express dudes are incredible.
It sincerely breaks my heart to not be able to travel to Canada at the moment. That my
sucks.
favorite place to be.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe when you come up to Canada, we'll meet up, go skate.
That would be great.
Sweet.
Yeah. Also, I'm thoroughly ready to sacrifice my American citizenship. So if there's any female Canadians that might be listening to the podcast that
Definitely. Hey.
sort of middle-aged Jewish guy with like really good eyebrows.
Yeah.
Let's lock this down. And maybe I can move up to the Great White North.
Ladies.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that was good. That was awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, you've been great.
Thanks, Todd.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
Peace.
Have a good night.
You too.